Yes, Mr. Netanyahu. Yes, I can hear you. Oh, yes, the plan is going swimmingly. I have puppeteered everyone into believing, falsely, that Hasan Piker is anti-Semitic. Yes, ha 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 ha, evil stuff, evil, 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 evil stuff. What up, everybody? Good evening. Good evening to you all. I'm just going to make sure I capture your guys' chat. Today's stream is titled Hasan Piker is Anti-Semitic. We've been doing a lot of work lately learning about Mr. Hasan Piker and his connections with people like Norman Finkelstein, who I've demonstrated quite clearly by the available data that he, Norman Finkelstein, is an anti-Semite. That might not be news to some of you, but I don't know these people the way many of you know them. Maybe I'm late to the game, but I mean, I'm not really in the loop on this kind of stuff the same way a lot of you are. So maybe I'll just duplicate this. Duplicate. How do I just... Interesting. What up, everyone? Make sure you smash the like button when you get into the room. Maybe I can put my X up there. No, it's all right. So last night we did a stream focusing in on Mr. Pisco, and we generated a report on Pisco's history with the concept of anti-Semitism. And we found some strange things, some asymmetry of application of the concept of anti-Semitism, where it seems easy for Pisco to label someone like Nick Fuentes anti-Semitic, but for some reason there seems to be this standard of needing to know intent coming from the mind of Hasan Piker in order to call Hasan Piker anti-Semitic. Interestingly enough, today I was told by some people I work with, and some other people that have messaged me, that there was a live stream today where Pisco and Lonerbox were talking through anti-Semitism some more. So I'll be interested to look into that. And I'll be interested to see if Pisco has changed his mind on any of his strange asymmetry in the application of being able to apply the label of anti-Semitic to some people easily. You know, someone like Nick Fuentes, who's a right-winger, and seemingly much more difficult for him to do that with people who might be included in a political project that Pisco is included in. So, and then we also went over this phenomena of Pisco doesn't need to know intent for something like MAGA racism, where he has said in the past, you know, if he hears someone is MAGA, he just assumes they're racist. So there's these weird double standards going around with this Pisco individual. So it'll be interesting to see the development on that. I've not watched the conversation from today. Yeah, someone said someone's saying in the chat, did you watch the Pisco Avi and Lonerbox combo? Not the one from today. I did not. I was told about it a lot to check it out because, well, some people said that Pisco seemed to go out of his way to clarify definitions and usages of the term and clarify a lot of things. So we will include that in an updated version of the report in following this. Pudding says, you are far more dangerous than any of the other talking head commentators out there. Your insistence to peddle your bias horseshit as, quote, data driven and academic is a disgrace to academia. Well, I am open to update. If you can point to anything in any of my data, my reports, my epistemic findings, if you can point to any of it, and it is in fact incorrect, I will update those corrections. All of my documentation, all of my information is open to update. All of my documents are living documents. But what I have found as of late is people will make comments like you just did, put in, and not come up with any goods. You'll just say, you're biased horseshit. You're selling it as data-driven and academic. It's a disgrace to academia. And then I ask, okay, what specifically? Let's take a look at it. And then usually no comment follows. So we'll see today if a comment follows where you say, well, this particular thing you said is incorrect. Because if you bring that to me, I will investigate it. Puddin says 2 minutes. Okay, so you didn't have anything, right? So you need to try and go find something. But this is my point, is that when you come on and you say, you are far more dangerous than any of the other talking head commentators out there, your insistence to peddle your biased horseshit as data-driven and academic is a disgrace to academia. And then I'm like, okay, give me the goods. And you say you need 2 minutes. So you didn't have it ready, right? Usually when you say something like that, you're holding a belief that should be well justified, well founded. You should be able to provide your justifications. But where are they? But why don't we look at some of the glaring cases against Hasan? This is why I now, after doing all the work, I personally believe he is anti-Semitic. So let's look at it. And maybe I'll take some calls today. If there's anyone in the chat or in the show that really wants to call in and chat with me, I'm happy to do that. I will also respond directly to all super chats if the chat gets going too fast and I can't keep up or whatever. I will respond to every super chat. But let's go through the evidence that I've unveiled in the past couple weeks here. For those of you who don't know, I did 6 long 3-hour plus episodes investigating and analyzing the recent conversation between Hasan Piker and Norm Finkelstein. And what did I find? I found a lot of misinformation and a lot of terrifying, explicit examples of anti-Semitism. And also on the part of Hasan Piker, the platforming and lack of pushback on that anti-Semitism in that particular episode that was shot very recently. So for anyone that says, oh, well, you're just looking at old Hasan, he's upgraded. No, that's not where we're at. This is a very recent conversation, but we're also going to look at the pattern today, because there is a pattern. We looked at this a bit last night during the rundown on the Pisco situation. And by the way, all Pisco has to do, and maybe he did it today in his live stream, it seems to be the case, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but whenever I get on here and call people out directly and send them an email, they seem to be talking about that very thing the next day. We'll keep an eye on that, after this episode today, and we'll see. Maybe it's just a coincidence, but I did email this information to Pisco. I also sent it to Destiny for his browsing pleasure. But it's just the data. It's where we're at. So it should be easy for Pisco to see that Hasan is anti-Semitic. This shouldn't really be a mystery to anyone. Although I will tip my hat to Mr. Hasan Piker. He is very sneaky. He's not like Norm Finkelstein, where he literally let me get some Norm Finkelstein quotes together. Norm Finkelstein on the podcast with Hasan Piker. I believe the Jews brought it on themselves. Resentment towards the Jews, it has a rational foundation. Because the Jews used considerable financial power to suppress speech. This stuff was literally said on Hasan Piker's show. I feel like society, like, and I know maybe I'm just late to the game here, but let's see. Oh, is this person a Dave Farina hardcore fan? Regarding the Dave PDF, I'll be direct about what I am claiming. I'm not saying the factual work is wrong. Oh, okay. So there we go. Let's go back to your comment, though. Your insistence to peddle your bias horseshit as, quote, data-driven and academic is disgrace. Well, you're not saying the facts are wrong. So it seems to be data-driven, right? So your first initial comment put in seems to be out to lunch. A meaningful chunk of it is right and checkable, and I'll say which parts below. I'm saying, you say, oh, what's going on with my scrolling here? Oh, maybe you're just copying it. I'm saying the apparatus wrapped around that work will destroy it, and that the ledger does not survive its own stated methodology. Both of those are demonstrable from the document itself without reference to the video. Without reference to the video. Everything is referenced to the video in those documents. I'm not trying to get one guide in the chat, but I'm really curious as to what someone who said, you know, you're fake this and that, is disgrace to academia. The apparatus wrapped around that work will destroy it. No, it hasn't destroyed it thus far. In fact, I can share the website statistics. People are very, very interested in the anti-Semitism I am bringing to light, the blatant stuff that's anti-Semitic, and it's seemingly all over YouTube. And there are very few people with clout pointing it out. There's a lot of I've noticed there's a lot of when I look at the channels, just hardcore pro-Israel people who call it out, but their level of their conclusions they draw from it, their level of not being able to separate their own politics from the actual data and the standards of anti-Semitism and things like that causes them to lose credibility. But I think what's happening in my case, you know, I'm approaching this as a moral well-beingist. I will give my ethical prescriptions, but I don't have a political project I am trying to serve here. Just like in Canada, when I vote for whatever election that pops up, local elections, federal elections, provincial, I do my well-being calculus. I don't belong to the left wing, the right wing, the liberals or conservatives in Canada. I just do my well-being calculus. That's all I'm doing here. And I see anti-Semitism as anti-well-being posture, ethical posture. Needs to be stopped, needs to be called out, needs to be shamed. But no, the apparatus that I'm working with here you said you have no quibbles with the facts. There might be some people out there that be like, "Oh, Travis uses AI agents to do research for him." Yeah, if you know how to use AI tools in an epistemically rigorous way, then they are amazing tools. And I think, in fact, they are here to cure misinformation, but they have to be used in a well-educated way. They must, or else they can fall into the same kind of bullcrap human beings fall into, hallucinations, sycophantry, all of these things that are problems with these tools. If you use it, it's no different than, someone who learns to use a hammer really well, and then this new tool comes along called the spike gun or the nail gun for framing houses, and one guy can frame up walls himself with that spike gun, like twice or three times as fast as someone who's really good with hammer and nail. And I literally see it like that. However, someone who doesn't know what they're doing with a spike gun can put a spike through their foot, can waste a lot of time, waste a lot of resources if they don't know how to use the nail spiker or the nail gun when they're framing. So yeah, you got to learn how to use the tools. If you use the tools like an idiot, you're going to get idiotic results from it. So, oh yeah, Fell Runner, I'd love to make you a mod. Um, I just had to refresh my window for some reason. I wasn't able to click. It's not even allowing me to click on you to make you a mod. Anyways, I'll figure that out at some point. Yeah, I don't know why. I'll have to figure that out. Oh, I know why. Psh, I know why. Let's see here. Boom.
Organizar tu trabajo no tiene.
Saying I need to sign in. Weird. Maybe I'm being shut down by them. That would be sad. Boom. Boom. Okay, there we go. Now I can make you a mod. Add as moderator. Make sure you invite your friends to the stream. If anyone wants to share my X post where I said we are live, please share this X post and follow me on X. There, you are a mod now, Bell Runner. Okay, so yeah, Hasan Piker had, first of all, he's a huge fan, from his own words, of Norman Finkelstein. He let Norman Finkelstein just lay on thick the anti-Semitism, spread it out there to the world, to all the young people who listen to Hasan Piker, all of this stuff. And yeah, that video is just, not only allowed on YouTube, but I'm pretty sure that video is monetized. That's pretty terrifying stuff. And I don't want to hear any whataboutism. I'm not saying there might be other issues in other places with other people being racist or hardcore Islamophobes or something like that. But this is the issue I'm working on right now. I'm not closed off to hearing more from you guys about some other bad crap that's going on online that's not being properly checked and called out. But anyways, let's go back to this. Let's get to some direct anti-Semitic content from Hasan. So the Haredi / Orthodox Jews, end quote, inbred. Current independent reporting identifies Hasan's description of some Orthodox Jews as, quote, inbred. Just want to make sure you guys can see this well. AP reports the controversy, and Nexus published a current analysis explicitly acknowledging that Hasan has faced false anti-Semitism accusations, while concluding that this usage of Haredi and Orthodox Jews being inbred is not one of those cases of false anti-Semitism. This is a case of anti-Semitism, a case of Hasan Piker being anti-Semitic. Nexus's reasoning is important. Using the insult against non-Jews does not neutralize its history or meaning when targeted at a Jewish subgroup. Okay, really important. People can be very sneaky in how they try to get away with anti-Semitism. Using the insult against non-Jews does not neutralize its history or meaning when targeted at a Jewish subgroup. Hasan's current response, quote, "I never said Jews are inbred," is preserved in full as counter evidence. The narrow scope distinction may be literally relevant if he meant Haredi / Orthodox Jews rather than all Jews. It does not, however, defeat a message level finding about a Jewish subgroup. Saying, quote, "well, not all Jews," is different from showing the subgroup targeted hereditary claim was non-anti-Semitic. So this is direct evidence of anti-Semitism from Hasan, direct evidence of him being anti-Semitic. Anti-Semitic content supported in identified usage, high confidence that the dispute exists, and that Nexus independently classifies the targeted usage as anti-Semitic. Private motive remains separate. This isn't targeting specific actors. It is targeting subgroups of Jews. So I agree with Nexus's finding. This is anti-Semitism from Hasan Piker. By the way, if anyone wants access to the Pangburn analysis system, all you have to do is go to pang-burn.com/analysis. Right at the top of the page, you will see the Pangburn AI system fact check application. You can download that document, and there is a prompt to copy and paste into your own LLMs, and then it will have the power of what I do when I'm creating fact-checking documents. You'll want to run that prompt at your highest possible level of rigor with the most agents available to you. The more agents you have available, the more powerful the particular LLM or AI system you are running, the more rigorous it is going to be. So you want to make sure you don't like simply run it on fast. It doesn't mean it's not going to get all the information correct, but you're going to have less chances of errors and mistakes if you run it at a higher level of rigor that whatever LLM model you are using offers. So Okay. Well, someone just said, is there any debate you think you can make with Destiny, who is a large figure like Kissen? Well, we just did Kissen. That was a high profile debate for Destiny. Um, there are some. I mean, we have Destiny is going to be going up against Ezra Levant from Canada. He's one of the biggest right wing, one of the most influential right wing figures in Canada. So that's another big one that's coming up on September. Let me just pull it up on my little screen here so you guys can see that one. On. Oh, that didn't really do anything. Which one is it? Not that one. Boom and boom. There we go. There it is. On September 19th in Vancouver. Also, by the way, on the 18th in Vancouver, Kyla Turner, Not So Erudite, and Destiny will be on stage together, which will be fantastic. A lot of fun. And Planet Peterson from the channel Planet Peterson, he's going to be coming up and going to be debating head to head with Stephen Bonnell, Destiny, on Israel Palestine issues related to whether or not there has been a genocide committed in Gaza. And he's also going to go head to head with Kyla Turner on some things related to religion. So that's going to be a lot of fun. You guys have the Pangburn analysis website page, the web page there. So just go there and check it out. And if you download at the top of the page, there's a Pangburn AI analysis document to download there. And in that document, you will see clear instructions how to use this fact checking model. And this is always a work in progress, so that will be updated as it needs to be updated. And all the analysis I work eventually makes its way onto the Pangburn analysis web page, so it'll all be in one spot. So what's the other one? So we just dealt with the inbred, the Haredi inbred comment from Hasan Piker. Even though someone makes a comment like this, and maybe it wasn't meant to be anti-Semitic, maybe it's their first time saying something like this, it's still anti-Semitic, but that doesn't necessarily mean they are, an anti-Semite or generally anti-Semitic. The big question today is, Hasan Piker generally anti-Semitic? Is Hasan Piker an anti-Semite? There are a lot of people who will defend against this proposition until they're blue in the face. But we are going to include all of the data in this stream here today. So make sure you smash that like button. Make sure you share on X my post that we are live about this. Let's try to get as many people in the room as we can. That would be fantastic. There was the Jake Auchincloss and, quote, straight up Israel first statement. Now, to a lot of people, this might seem, and we'll get into the details of this might seem like, not that bad. What could be so bad about saying straight up Israel first towards someone when it seems like they're just doing something because they support Israel? The Boston Globe reports that Representative Jake Auchincloss, who is Jewish, criticized Graham Plattner's Nazi / Totenkopf tattoo as disqualifying. Hasan responded with, straight up Israel first. The immediate dispute was, of course, Nazi imagery and candidate standards, not Israeli policy. This makes the statement structurally different from calling a pro-Israel position, quote, Israel first. It attributes foreign allegiance motivation to a Jewish politician, where the predicate supplied in the exchange was Nazi extremism. Nexus treats dual loyalty / foreign allegiance accusations against Jews as a core anti-Semitism concern when Jewishness supplies the inferential bridge. Version 2 of this report therefore regards the Auchincloss episode as one of the strongest direct cases because it survives the anti-Zionism firewall. So basically, this was a Jewish representative, and he made a critique about Graham Plattner's Nazi tattoo as disqualifying. And then Hasan said, straight up Israel first. Because this person is Jewish and because they had this disqualifying position against Graham Plattner, that means this Jew is doing it because Israel must be put first. That's what Hasan said here. So the verdict here, strong anti-Semitic trope structure / dual loyalty concern, high confidence on the reported context. Yeah. So there's another direct example. Now, some people might say, well, you know, things slip out. Things slip out. Sometimes what can happen is some people won't have a clear understanding of what is considered anti-Semitism on the global stage of adjudication of these terms. Like, for example, so Nexus provides a guide to identifying anti-Semitism, in particular, in this citation, in debates about Israel. The framework separates Israel criticism from anti-Semitism, flags dual loyalty / Jewish control as anti-Semitic. We also look at Jewish declaration of anti-Semitism as a resource, a source and framework protective of anti-Zionism, flags Holocaust denial as collective guilt. We use IHRA, their working definition / examples. This is a widely used framework worldwide. We use USHMM, Holocaust denial and anti-Semitism. This is a historical educational source. So you will see between these organizations, sometimes there will be some disagreements on particular instances and issues, but for the most part, they are quite linked on what should be considered anti-Semitism and what shouldn't be. Someone said, this is AI. Yes, Jacob, I use AI agents that are trained on my rigorous epistemic standards to do research for me. Yes, I do. But if you have any objections to any of the facts that are collected here, I'm open to hearing your objections and we will adjudicate them live on the air. But this is AI doesn't cut it anymore. People are starting to realize that if you are well educated and you know how to use these tools, you can do very powerful things with them, like creating substantial PhD level fact finding reports that have a very, very low error rate, much lower error rate than basically any fact finding I see happening on the internet by organizations that think they're doing rigorous fact finding. I'll put my system up against any of theirs with regards to the rigor and standards being employed. Yeah, so once we start getting into this silly thing of like, some people are afraid of AI and how AI can hallucinate or engage in sycophantry or be biased. Like, you want to talk about bias? The kinds of bias, the human bias, I unveil every damn night when I'm live is just catastrophic. When you use AI tools in an uneducated way, yeah, they can hallucinate. They can show up with some bias. They can engage in sycophantic behavior, trying to tell you what you want to hear. But that stuff is very easy to program out of these systems. You just have to know how to operate them properly. It's just like when the internet dropped, right? People were saying the same things. Well, I mean, what, are we not going to go to the library anymore and teach our children how to do scholarly physical citations directly from the library? Well, eventually they stopped doing that. They stopped doing it. My understanding is there is not a strong emphasis put on going to the physical library and being able to do physical pen to paper scholarly citations. We use computers for it. We use the internet. We teach children how to use the internet in a safe, healthy way. Same thing goes for these AI tools. I mean, you can think of any tool analogy, but I do like the hammer analogy, that if it's your first day, if it's your first time using a hammer and you're trying to hammer a 3-inch or 4-inch nail into a solid piece of oak, that you're going to have a difficult time doing that. And you might even hurt yourself. But education is the answer here. Not to join the anti-AI religion that is only, anyone who joins that religion is just going to be handicapped in most anything they're trying to do in spaces that, especially in intellectual spaces. Yeah, someone says, I think the issue is people are assuming you are asking one question, taking one answer from the GPT. Yeah, anyone who does like the slightest bit of research into what I'm doing, I've provided the Penguin AI system fact check application. That's just one application of Penguin analysis, but that's on our website. They can check it out themselves. But yeah, but the biggest thing when people criticize these tools, I'm constantly asking, okay, show me where my process produced hallucination, produce, whatever, things that were incorrect. And it's not to say that they are perfect. There will be mistakes, but the documents are all open to update and living documents. So we have these two big cases, right, of obvious anti-Semitism from Hasan Piker. And then we have some group essentializing rhetoric. So advocacy compilations also document a formulation describing Israel as a nation of, quote, messianic, inbred, ultra-Orthodox psychopaths. I actually would like to look into this, get a further verification on this. Let's go to... What up, everyone? Good evening to you all. Make sure you take a second to smash that like button and share the stream with all your friends, family, enemies, whoever. And related to hereditary / group pathology rhetoric, because an advocacy compilation is not a neutral source and exact wording matters, original video should control any publication alleging an exact quote. Yes, Hasan Piker did say these words: messianic, inbred, ultra-Orthodox psychopaths. The archive source index links directly to Hasan's VOD. This isn't the first time Israel attacked Lebanon. Hasan Piker said that Israel could, quote, inevitably turn into a nation entirely comprised of messianic, inbred, ultra-Orthodox psychopaths. He was referring to a feared future Israel dominated by religious ultranationalists. Let's look at Jewish supremacy and Zionism / Nazism. Hasan has publicly used Jewish supremacy and compared Zionism to fascism / Nazism. These are not scored as automatic anti-Semitism. A phrase such as Jewish supremacy can refer to an actual Jewish supremacist political ideology. Zionism / Nazi analogies are treated differently by IHRA versus JDA / Nexus. This report therefore codes these as context dependent and often inflammatory, not self-proving evidence of Jew hatred. Let's look at, so all of this anti-Semitism in the conversation that was just promoted by Hasan Piker with Norman Finkelstein. Finkelstein, whatever, he is explicitly anti-Semitic. He is an anti-Semite. I believe the Jews brought it on themselves. This is collective blame, victim blame directed at Jews as a group. Specific donor conduct cannot transfer responsibility to the Jews. He was specifically referring to donor conduct in this comment. IHRA, collective blame, JDA, hostility, prejudice against Jews as Jews, Nexus, collective guilt. The trifecta. So Norm Finkelstein, and this report is soon going to be available on our website, said just a litany of anti-Semitic things. Like resentment towards Jews, it has a rational foundation because Jews use considerable financial power to suppress speech. He's saying Jews, use considerable financial power to suppress speech. Explicitly rationalizes resentment toward Jews on a collective financial power premise, strong cross framework anti Semitism signal. So, across all of our anti Semitism resources. So, we have lots of examples here. But what we're talking about today is Hasan Piker and Hasan Piker's anti Semitism. So, Finkelstein, what I want to look at here is because in this conversation between Hasan and Finkelstein, Hasan didn't do a lot of speaking, but he engaged in a lot of amplification and facilitation of anti Semitism. You can be anti Semitic for platforming, amplifying, facilitating anti Semitism. It's just not a free lunch when you invite Norman Finkelstein on your show to espouse many, many different instances of explicit anti Semitism. So Finkelstein said that there was no forensic evidence / no single frame let's see. Oh, that one was specifically about the rape allegation. Yeah, it's still misinformation, but I want to look at the anti-Semitism bits. So, quote, no systematic anti-Semitism. This is from Norman Finkelstein. He was saying there's that Jewish applicants for universities benefit from a system rigged in their favor. Positive stereotypes have no life cost. And he was talking about that there's no systematic anti-Semitism in the United States. Hasan signaled broad prior agreement with much of Finkelstein's anti-Semitism discussion and said he largely agreed. So we have affiliative partial agreement. So when Finkelstein said, the Jews brought it on themselves, Jewish billionaires, supremacists, destroyed academic freedom, donor and financial pressure, these kinds of things. There was no challenge from Hasan Piker. There was an amplification of the underlying actor-specific narrative. There was a delayed challenge. Finkelstein said, resentment toward Jews has a, quote, rational foundation because of Jewish financial power. Hasan does not instantly interrupt, then explicitly say, here's where you and I differ. There was a delayed challenge here. Strong exculpatory evidence against treating the collective Jewish premise as Hasan's own. It also shows the challenge was delayed until after the core trope had been developed. So the core trope is being allowed to be developed, and there is a delayed challenge from Hasan Piker where he says, you know, here's where you and I differ. This completely unhinged part from Norm Finkelstein He said, Israeli Jews, they're not Jews. Jews exercise disproportionate power wealth. 95% of anti-Semitism would disappear under a different Israeli label. So he was talking about this stuff like, when I was a kid, Jews used to be scraggly, into numbers, looked a certain way, did certain things. Like he was outlining a Jew stereotype. And he's like, that's what Jews used to be. And now look at Israel. Israeli Jews, they're not Jews. That's what he said on this podcast. And there was no challenge from Hasan Piker. There was no direct correction of those exact propositions. Hasan said he doesn't disagree with a large part. And then he redirected towards Zionism/rights. So you can get transcripts off videos by going to the video itself, clicking the transcript to open it. So you have it on the side, and then if you Control P on Google Chrome, it'll actually print out the entire PDF for you. That's one way to do it. But I use I believe it's Descript. I use a software that tends to be a bit more accurate. But yeah, there are a lot of different softwares you can use to get transcripts. But you can now Control P the transcript and PDF print it onto your desktop. So Norman Finkelstein being a hardcore anti-Semite, this for me is just, I have demonstrated this so clearly. I didn't only look at Norman Finkelstein's conversation with Hasan, but this is across a large corpus of conversations. He's just seemingly every time he's on anyone's show talking about Israel, Palestine, he is dropping anti-Semitism in those shows. So just as a general statement, it's correct that Norm Finkelstein is an anti-Semite, anti-Semitic. Hasan Piker invites him on, praises Norman Finkelstein, and says that, and Hasan says, wow, I'm really nervous because I'm a huge fan of yours, and then goes on to allow him to spout off anti-Semitic remarks throughout the course of this podcast together, and doesn't correct it. There were a couple moments where Hasan interjected and said, well, I don't think any, group of people is monolithic. And that's the right thing to say. But he should be saying it for all of these instances that come up in their conversation. These conversations that seem that people don't realize that these are classic anti-Semitic tropes, like when Norm Finkelstein says, Jews do exercise disproportionate power, wealth, and so forth, and that will always be a problem for Jews. What Jews? Which ones? Who? All of them? Just Jews as a with no actor boundary? That's the thing that these organizations are looking for, that are the anti-Semitic watchdogs of the world. There's no actor mentioned. It's just the Jews in general. Which Jews? Canadian Jews? Hasidic Jews? New York Jews? Which Jews? Jews that live in London, England. People don't realize that this is just pure anti-Semitism. And it sounds like, no, that's just a descriptive fact, man. Jews do exercise disproportionate power, wealth, and so forth, and that will always be a problem for Jews. No, it's not Jews. It's particular people with particular names. It's not Jews, Norm. So we have these two blatant issues. Another huge issue. Hamas, Houthi, and Hezbollah related normalization. This is another massive issue that further demonstrates the anti-Semitism of Hasan Piker. Hasan has publicly defended a comparative claim that Hamas is, quote, 1,000 times better than Israel, and later reaffirmed that he means the comparison. He has also spoken sympathetically about Houthi resistance and interviewed a viral Yemeni figure associated with the Houthi maritime campaign. Public sources vary on formal membership, so this version 2 of this report does not overstate the status. Advocacy/media sources document favorable Hezbollah-related rhetoric as well. We're also going to do a deeper dive into this today. I want more on this. Dino Freak says he's talking about Jews, the person, obviously. Oh, man. Darth Alpha the Great says, I don't know until Hasan has a chance to defend himself. Well, there is no defense. This stuff is anti-Semitic. There's no defense of that. It is anti-Semitic. He can say, oh, I didn't mean it to be anti-Semitic, but it's still anti-Semitic. The intent doesn't matter. This is something that Pisco and some other people I've noticed online have had this weird thing going on with, like, thinking that intent needs to be demonstrated in order for things to be called anti-Semitic. That's just insanity. That's not understanding this domain at all. Some people have told me Pisco changed his mind today live on the air. I sent the email out. I don't know, but no response from Pisco. So these statements we just read related to Hamas, Houthi, and Hezbollah related normalization, they are not automatically anti-Semitic statements. They are normalization cases. So Hamas, the Houthi movement, and Hezbollah have carried anti-Semitic ideological rhetorical material. A streamer can support an anti-Israel objective, without adopting that material. Nevertheless, responsible promotion requires explicit ideological boundary setting when the movement itself contains anti-Jewish doctrine. These groups, Hamas, Houthi, and Hezbollah, contain anti-Jewish doctrine. Where is the explicit ideological boundary setting between Hasan and these groups with regards to anti-Jewish doctrine? Is that made explicit? I mean, some people might say, well, because Hasan Piker at times says, you know, groups of people should not be treated monolithically. They might think that that's enough. I'm just trying to get a little more information on what Hasan has specifically said about these groups. I want to look at that. But it is clear to me, I don't know what you guys think, but it is clear to me after watching and studying, deep studying the Norm Finkelstein Hasan Piker conversation, that Hasan Piker is anti-Semitic. Maybe he's not intending to be. Maybe he thinks he has created this anti-Semitism firewall that he employs often enough to shield him from claims of anti-Semitism. But I don't think so. So, with regards to the Houthis, Hasan calls their resistance moral and just, celebrates ship seizure, agrees with this Anne Frank comparison. Anne Frank Holocaust symbolism. The reported Anne Frank analogy around a pro-Houthi teen is potentially trivializing or symbolically inverted, but it is not Holocaust denial. So our report refuses to inflate a rhetorical offense into a different factual category. Houthi slogan explicitly says, "Curse on the Jews." So this would be one of the strongest, like with the Houthis, this would be one of the strongest anti-Semitism adjacent normalization cases. Calls their resistance moral and just, celebrates their ship seizure, agrees with the Anne Frank comparison. But yeah, the Houthi slogan is "Curse on the Jews." Hasan has explicitly said what the Houthis are doing, on the other hand, is resistance, and it's not only moral, but it's just. When you say things like this about groups that have "Curse on the Jews" as their slogan, what the Houthis are doing, on the other hand, is resistance, and it's not only moral, but it's just, he says. Separately, in 2024, Hasan enthusiastically showed Nick Polam footage of the Houthis seizing a commercial vessel and portrayed their actions as an attempt to economically punish Israel over Gaza. He described the Houthis as people willing to take action for Palestinians and said they had been doing it effectively. This becomes especially relevant to anti-Semitism because the Houthi movement is not merely vaguely associated with occasional anti-Semitic members. Explicit anti-Jewish language is embedded in the movement's famous slogan. Reuters reported crowds at Houthi rallies chanting, "God is great, death to America, death to Israel, curse on the Jews, victory to Islam." Reuters also describes ideological indoctrination under Houthi rule. Let's look at Hezbollah. Hasan says, I don't have an issue with them. Not a single issue. So again, Hasan says, I don't have an issue with Hezbollah. Not a single issue. With their military, favorite flag, disputes that Hezbollah is anti-Semitic. Hezbollah has a documented history of anti-Jewish ideological rhetoric. So this is a very strong ideological sanitation case where Hasan seems to be playing politics for Hezbollah, trying to soften them for his audience. Hezbollah has a documented history of anti-Jewish ideological rhetoric. Hasan's comments about Hezbollah are unusually difficult to dismiss as merely, quote, I support Palestinian rights. In September 2024, while explaining Hezbollah to Nick Polam, Hasan said, quote, I think as a resistance group, they're pretty successful against Israel. Asked directly whether, quote, we like them, he ultimately said, I don't have an issue with them, let's just say. Hasan himself then acknowledged that Hezbollah was designated a terrorist organization by the United States. When Polam responded that he therefore didn't like them, Hasan countered, well, I mean, we also called Nelson Mandela a terrorist until 2008. So Hasan was not merely neutrally describing Hezbollah, he was actively resisting the inference that its terrorism designation should produce moral rejection and analogizing the labeling problem to Nelson Mandela. Then in the May 2025 Ethan Klein discussion, Hasan was even more explicit. I do not have a single issue with Hezbollah as a form of militancy trying to incur penalties on the genocidal state of Israel. And in 2025, he said of the Hezbollah flag, overall, what my favorite flag is Hezbollah. Look it up. I'm not even kidding. It's actually a dope flag. It's got an AK on it and a effing hand holding it up. Those statements are independently cataloged with dates by the ADL. The flag remark by itself is weak evidence of ideological support. Someone can aesthetically like a flag combined with, quote, I don't have an issue with them, and, quote, I do not have a single issue with Hezbollah as a form of militancy. However, it becomes part of a broader pattern. And this is the pattern we're looking at today. We have direct evidence of anti-Semitism by Hasan that we went through. And there is a lot of evidence of him promoting groups or people that themselves promote anti-Semitism or espouse anti-Semitism. We went through Norman Finkelstein, which was the most recent, most contemporaneous example. And we just are going through Hezbollah, Houthis, and Hamas. Make sure you guys smash that like button. Welcome to the stream. If you guys don't know how to get transcripts, if you just Google search that, you will find how to do that. So let's see where we left off here. Then comes the most important 2026 development. In June 2026 interview with The Times, Hasan went further than merely praising Hezbollah's resistance. He explicitly disputed the characterization of both Hamas and Hezbollah as anti-Semitic, maintaining instead that they are nationalist, anti-colonial movements. Importantly, he simultaneously acknowledged that Hamas had committed atrocities and war crimes and said targeting civilians was unconditionally immoral. Well, that's good. So the Times interview is unusually useful because it gives us both sides of Hasan's actual position rather than a hostile clip compilation. This produces a much stronger criticism than guilt by association. Hasan isn't merely supporting one objective pursued by Hezbollah while acknowledging its anti-Semitism. He has publicly disputed describing Hezbollah itself as anti-Semitic. That is an empirical / interpretive claim about Hezbollah, which can itself be tested. Is Hezbollah actually anti-Semitic? There is strong historical evidence that parts of Hezbollah's ideology and leadership rhetoric have crossed from anti-Israel politics into hostility towards Jews as Jews. A particularly useful source is Amal Saad Goreeb, a Lebanese scholar of Hezbollah who is herself intensely critical of Israel. Her research concluded that Hezbollah contained a deep theological anti-Jewish current. She described, quote, real antipathy to Jews as Jews in Hezbollah ideology and distinguish this from simple opposition to Zionism. The New Yorker documented both her scholarship and explicitly anti-Jewish rhetoric from Hezbollah, associated officials, and media. That source is unusually probative because Saad Goreeb cannot reasonably be dismissed as simply applying a pro-Israel definition in which criticism of Israel is automatically anti-Semitic. There is an important historical source warning here. Some viral quotations attributed to Hasan Nasrallah have disputed attribution histories. Okay. This is therefore stronger, with regards to Hezbollah, this is therefore stronger than, quote, Hasan supports a group that happens to contain some anti-Semites. A better characterization is Hasan has repeatedly legitimized Hezbollah's militancy, stated that he has, quote, no issue with it in the anti-Israel context, favorably discussed its symbolism, and subsequently disputed the characterization of Hezbollah as anti-Semitic despite a substantial historical record of anti-Jewish rhetoric within Hezbollah ideology and leadership. That is the ideological sanitation / whitewashing. This is strongly supported. So there's explicit anti-Jewish rhetoric within Hezbollah. Hasan said about Hezbollah, I don't have an issue with them. He also said, yeah, I don't have an issue with them. Not a single issue. So why isn't the anti-Semitism being called out within Hezbollah by Hasan Piker? Why isn't he calling it out? He says he doesn't have a single issue with them. Let's look at Hamas. Hamas, quote, 1,000 times better than Israel. I do mean it. Vote for Hamas over Israel every single time. Disputes Hamas disputes that Hamas is anti-Semitic. 1988 charter contained unmistakably anti-Jewish material, though 2017 document explicitly repudiates a war against Jews as Jews. So there's very strong normalization here, anti-Semitism connection. So let's look at the information. So Hamas, probably the strongest overall normalization by Hasan Piker, but the anti-Semitism question is more complicated. Hasan wrote in January 2026, Hamas is 1,000 times better than the fascist settler colonial apartheid state. Then John Favreau confronted him directly about it on Pod Save America. Hasan answered, I stand by that. Favreau explicitly reminded him that Hamas massacred, kidnapped, and sexually assaulted civilians on October 7th, and asked whether Hasan actually meant the comparison or was merely making a rhetorical solidarity gesture. Hasan's response was, I mean, it's all of the above. I do mean it. And I'm a lesser evil voter, and therefore I would vote for Hamas over Israel every single time. He then described Hamas as arising from Palestinians orphaned under occupation and said Hamas's tactics, which he said he sometimes opposes, and internal governance were, quote, secondary to the conversation. That completely resolves any argument that the original, quote, 1,000 times better remark was simply an accidental hyperbole. Hyperbole he didn't mean. He was expressly invited to distinguish rhetorical provocation from substantive belief and said both applied. The New Republic independently interviewed Hasan and likewise reported that he stood by the basic sentiment. Importantly, that article is broadly sympathetic to Hasan and argues that the comparison itself is not anti-Semitic because its author understands Hasan is making a comparison between the scale of Palestinian suffering and Israeli/Hamas conduct rather than expressing hostility towards Jews. So Hamas is 1,000 times better than Israel is not standing alone an anti-Semitic statement. It is better classified as extreme Hamas normalization. But Hamas's anti-Semitic history is unmistakable. The original 1988 Hamas covenant does not merely oppose, quote, Zionists. Article 7 reproduces the eschatological hadith about Muslims fighting Jews and Jews hiding behind stones and trees before being killed. The charter also invokes the Protocols of Elders of Zion, one of history's most notorious anti-Semitic conspiracy texts, as purported evidence of Zionist ambitions. Those aren't borderline Israel/Zionism cases. They are classic anti-Jewish material. But the 2017 Hamas document materially changes the analysis. This absolutely has to be in the expert report. Hamas 2017 political document states explicitly, Hamas affirms that its conflict is with the Zionist project, not with the Jews because of their religion. It further says Hamas does not struggle against Jews because they are Jewish. That does not erase the 1988 charter or every later anti-Semitic statement by Hamas figures, but it means we should not write as though Hamas's current official political document simply says, quote, kill Jews. It doesn't. This is why Hasan's June 2026 claim that Hamas is a nationalist/anti-colonial movement rather than an anti-Semitic one is not literally indefensible in every respect. He can point to Hamas's 2017 official language. The stronger criticism is that his description is selective and incomplete. Hamas has a historically explicit anti-Semitic ideological record, and describing the organization categorically as not anti-Semitic without confronting that history risks sanitizing a material part of its ideological development. Let's see. So the question here, is Hasan affirmatively minimizing or denying an anti-Semitic component of movements he supports? For Hezbollah, the answer is yes. For Hamas, we could say that that is a qualified yes, because Hamas's 2017 document supplies genuine counter evidence to a simple present tense classification, even though the organization's historical anti-Semitism is beyond serious dispute. For the Houthis, we don't see the same kind of explicit Hasan statement denying their anti-Semitism. The criticism is therefore normalizing despite glaring anti-Semitism rather than proven denial of that anti-Semitism. Interestingly, Hasan's own direct rhetoric about Jews is stronger evidence of anti-Semitism than his Hamas praise. If we're trying to determine whether Hasan himself has engaged in anti-Semitic speech, his inbred remarks, we already talked about that, are substantially more probative than Hamas is 1,000 times better. He said Israel's trajectory could inevitably turn Israel into a nation entirely comprised of messianic, inbred, ultra-Orthodox psychopaths. He also described extremist West Bank settlers as the Jewish KKK brigades, followed by just a bunch of effing inbred hicks. The New Republic directly confronted Hasan about the inbred language. Hasan explained that he routinely uses inbred against white supremacists and other ideological groups as a generic insult, which the reporter independently checked and found to be true. But Hasan nevertheless conceded that this was the strongest example where someone could sincerely think he sounded anti-Semitic and said, yeah, of course I regret that. So he has said he regretted that particular statement. But then he platforms with very little pushback, known anti-Semite Norman Finkelstein, and just allows him to speak his anti-Semitism out into the world, basically unchallenged, after saying he regretted this. Hmm. How's everyone doing? Hanging in there? Sorry I was a little bit late tonight. Yeah, Fell Runner says there are layers to it, in my opinion. Yep. Racism, anti-Semitism, homophobia, um, Islamophobia, all of these things have layers to them. That's right. You would say anti-Semitism is clear from Hasan, though I recognize the conscious effort to reel it in and be specific about what he's anti about. Yeah, he does that in some cases. There's evidence of him doing that in some cases, but in other cases, he just lets it fly. Like, there's very little about reeling it in. There were moments of that in the conversation with Norman Finkelstein, but like few and far between. Okay, that's this other document. I want to make sure you guys can see this whole document here. I guess you can only see that part. That's fine. Um, Yeah, I just for me, I just think, you know, when it comes to my epistemic standards, my commitment to holding beliefs and to having knowledge works on a confidence spectrum. After doing this research, after looking into Hasan deeply, after looking into his conversation with Norman Finkelstein deeply, after looking into these other issues, the kinds of organizations he is normalizing to his audience, I think there is a pattern that there's not only some instances, isolated instances of anti-Semitism, but I think there is a pattern, uh, a demonstrable pattern. Just that's what the evidence shows of him engaging in and promoting anti-Semitism. Promoting can come in the way of amplification on his podcast, on his show, and facilitation and normalization of groups like Hamas, Houthis, Hezbollah, saying I don't have an issue with them, not a single issue, when there is explicit anti Semitism in the charter. Not a single issue, not even the anti Semitism. So I do think that Hasan Piker is anti Semitic. So anonymous someone, is that your real name, said, you're still doing perceived anti-Semitism. You guys keep trying hard to tie Hassan's hate for Israel and Zionism as being anti-Semitic. You got no proof. I gave you the proof today. So hold on, stay right there. Don't move. We have the proof right here. These two explicit instances, right? The Haredi Orthodox Jews and inbred comment. He has apparently apologized for this and said that he regretted it. This other one, the Jake Auchincloss and straight up Israel First case. Remember, he said, just because this guy was Jewish, this Jake Auchincloss guy who criticized Graham Plantner's Nazi slash Totenkopf tattoo as disqualifying, he said, oh yeah, straight up Israel First, because this guy happened to be Jewish. So these are two pieces of direct evidence. You said we have no proof. The proof is right here. This is proof. Normalizing groups like Hezbollah, who have explicit anti-Semitism within that organization, saying he has not a single issue with Hezbollah. Allowing Norm Finkelstein to come on his podcast and spread his anti-Semitism out into the world, poisoning minds with that stuff. Anonymous, is that enough for you? You can't say you got no proof after that. It's right here. Okay, we actually have even more information to add to the ledger. let's look at. So apparently this inbred problem is a much larger than simply one quotation. So the biggest, we got a new discovery here. Quote, this is Jewish supremacy. In early 2026, Hasan responded on his own X account to reporting about U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran being associated rhetorically with the Jewish festival of Purim. Quote, this is Jewish supremacy. It's what Netanyahu said after October 7th. The original Hasan account post remains indexed online. JTA independently documented the statement in its March 2026 profile of Hasan. This is significantly more. I need to open my window. It's getting hot. This is significantly more anti-Semitism relevant than saying, quote, Zionist supremacy, or, quote, Israeli supremacy, or, quote, Likud supremacy, or even, quote, Jewish Israeli ultranationalism, because Hasan explicitly moved from a political state / ideological category to the Jewish supremacy or Jewish supremacy. A historian of American Jewish history and anti-Semitism, Pamela Nadell, subsequently singled this statement out in a July 2026 JTA essay, arguing that Hasan's rhetoric crosses into anti-Semitism. Jewish supremacy is extraordinarily broad language. A precise critique could have said, Netanyahu is exploiting Jewish religious symbolism to justify Israeli militarism. Hasan instead characterized the phenomena itself as Jewish supremacy. So there's substantial anti-Semitism concern here. Again, this is another case. We also are going to look at, let me just double check if my document is ready here. Okay, I have another report. I'm going to pull this one up as well. Hopefully you guys can see that. Hasan Piker and anti-Semitism. So I want to see. Okay, so we just went through the this is Jewish supremacy thing. Then we have repeated inbred descriptions. So apparently this has been repeated. It wasn't the only one isolated incident. So reproductive / biological degradation repeatedly attached to Orthodox Jews, settlers, or Jewish extremists. Strongest direct pattern of anti-Semitism. We already went through that. This is Jewish supremacy. Quote, Jewish KKK brigade / inbred Hicks. This is more of this inbred issue. Explicit Jewish label joined to dehumanizing insult. Political target. Context matters. ADL as Israeli suppression / espionage arm resembles dual loyalty / foreign control conspiracy structure, but targets a specific organization. There's a trope concern here. We're going to go through this in more detail. Zionist, quote, Zionist tendencies, quote, rabid neo-Nazi, extreme anti-Zionist demonization, not automatically anti-Jewish under narrow definitions. Quote, Zionism is a mental illness, dehumanizing rhetoric about a political ideology. Hamas, Houthi, Hezbollah, normalization. We already went through that. Pig dog allegation. Phrase authentic, anti-Semitic intent weak. After broader usage, context review, classic Jew control, Holocaust denial, blood libel. Okay, so let's look at this. We already went through the Jewish supremacy one. Recurrent inbred rhetoric, strongest direct pattern. The deep search indicates that the familiar, quote, messianic, inbred, ultra-Orthodox psychopaths quotation was not a one-off. Multiple 2024 instances connect inbred to Orthodox Jews, Jewish settlers, Israeli religious extremists, or related constituencies. March 2024, it is literally the Jewish KKK brigades out there, just a bunch of effing inbred hicks. June 2024, in a discussion of Ben Gvir's constituency, Hasan tells viewers to imagine an, quote, inbred white supremacist, and then imagine that person as Jewish and carrying out pogroms. Yikes. June 2024, quote, they're effing untrained inbred asses, in discussion of ultra-Orthodox Haredi military service. This is a pattern of referring to Jews using this derogatory language. June 2024, the 14-year-old inbred psychopath, while discussing a teenage ultra-Orthodox Israeli extremist accused of spitting at a Christian journalist. June 2024, quote, the inbred hicks of Israel in Jerusalem Day commentary. September 2024, messianic, inbred, ultra-Orthodox psychopaths in a prediction about a future Israel. We went through that already. Why the repetition matters. Inbred is not a neutral political insult. It invokes hereditary or reproductive degeneration. Repeatedly applying it to members of an endogamous ethno-religious minority can carry a biological group degradation implication, even if the immediate targets are extremists rather than Jews generally. The counter evidence here, the New Republic investigated Hasan's broader vocabulary and found that he also uses inbred against non-Jewish white supremacists, neo-Nazis, racists, and other far-right constituencies. Hasan has said this is a generic insult for ethno-nationalists / fundamentalist extremists, not a statement about Jewish biology. He also expressed regret for the ultra-Orthodox phrasing and acknowledged that a sincere listener could hear it as anti-Semitic. So he's recognizing his anti-Semitism there, the anti-Semitic statement. The evidence does not establish, in this case, that Hasan believes Jews are genetically inferior. It does establish a recurrent message level pattern in which biological degeneration language is attached to Jewish / Orthodox categories. Several instances reasonably qualify as anti-Semitic or anti-Semitism adjacent at the message level. ADL as an Israeli suppression and espionage arm. In January 2026, during controversy over Twitch policy, Hasan posted that the ADL, which is an arm of Israel's suppression in the West that works with law enforcement and does espionage. Criticism of the Anti-Defamation League is not inherently anti-Semitic. The concern arises from the combined structure. A prominent Jewish civil rights organization is described as an arm of a foreign Jewish state that suppresses speech in the West, penetrates law enforcement relationships, and conducts espionage. That resembles classic dual loyalty / foreign control conspiracy structures, although Hasan is discussing a named organization rather than the Jews as a collective. Finding statement supported, classic trope resemblance, strong proven assertion of a generalized Jewish conspiracy, that's not established. Best classification, this is anti-Semitism adjacent. Conspiratorial rhetoric is qualified here. Extreme demonization of Zionists. Hasan has used extremely dehumanizing or exclusionary language about Zionists. Examples include any kind of effing Zionist tendency should be treated in the same way as being a effing rabid neo-Nazi. Quote, Zionism is a mental illness. He has also used, quote, liberal Zionism analogies for liberal Zionism, liberal Nazi analogies for liberal Zionism, and argued that people with positive Zionist tendencies should be excluded even from trivial public roles such as local dog catcher. These statements are clearly demonizing. Whether they count as anti-Semitic depends strongly on the definition used. A narrow, quote, Jews as Jews standard does not make hostility to Zionists automatically anti-Semitic. Broader frameworks are more likely to flag Nazi analogies or categorical exclusion where Zionism is functioning as a proxy for Jewish identity. So that's the thing. Sometimes, like, people will just use Zionism as a proxy for Jewish identity. Um, a statement like, I wish the Nazis would have been successful in killing all the Zionists. Like a statement like that, anti-Semitic. Do you guys follow? Let's see if we heard back from Anonymous here. Anonymous, where you at? It says, if you guys just go by clips of Hasan, of course you're going to come to crazy conclusions. No, it's not us being crazy. It's not me being crazy or coming to crazy conclusions. This is just direct evidence of anti-Semitism that is being laid out here today. I can agree that Hasan has used explicit language against Israel and Zionists, but he has never been anti-Semitic. I gave you the evidence of anti-Semitism, Anonymous. Did you not read? Did you not see what we went through? I think you're avoiding the evidence. And then Anonymous says, I'm not the one here conflating Zionism with Judaism to do some straw man virtue signaling. You guys got no proof of anti-Semitism. I already went through the proof of anti-Semitism. Hasan himself already apologized for his own anti-Semitism. How is this bad faith? Anonymous, do you know that Hasan Piker apologized for his own anti-Semitism? Yeah, we're not just we're not just watching clips here. We're doing deep academic, deep dive analysis of things because it seems to not happen on the internet. Someone's got to do it. And that's what we're doing here. Seeing if we are justified in these claims. Dismissiveness toward anti-Semitism concerns. During Kamala Harris's October 2024 CNN town hall, Hasan predicted that a woman wearing a hostage ribbon would ask about campus anti-Semitism. When she thanked Harris for remembering the hostages and raised anti-Semitism, Hasan and a co-host laughed. Hasan says, I called it. I effing called it. The strongest hostile paraphrase that Hasan simply thinks Jewish suffering or anti-Semitism is funny is not established. The laughter appears tied to his prediction that the voter would raise a pro-Israel / anti-Semitism concern. Nevertheless, the exchange is fair evidence that he treated a Jewish voter's anti-Semitism concern as an ideologically predictable object of mockery rather than engaging it on its merits. This is very bad. Nevertheless, one more time, the exchange is fair evidence that he treated a Jewish voter's anti-Semitism concern as an ideologically predictable object of mockery rather than engaging on its merits. So a Jewish voter's concerned about anti-Semitism or the rise of anti-Semitism, and this is worthy of mockery. October 7th, sexual violence skepticism. Hasan has used phrases such as, quote, grape fantasies or grape hallucinations when criticizing some public claims about October 7th sexual violence. He also said, it doesn't matter if grape happened on October 7th. It doesn't change the dynamic for me. Yeah, this was a Norm Finkelstein said in that conversation they just had together that because murder is considered in almost all judicial standards around the world to be a greater crime than grape, Norm Finkelstein and Hasan were sitting there snickering, well, when Finkelstein's saying, I mean, they were murdered. It doesn't change the big picture if they were graped, right? And they're both just nodding along, shaking their head like, yeah, I know what you mean. Of course, grape changes the grand picture of things. If someone violated a corpse that way, or if they were graped before they were murdered, that doesn't change the big picture. This is some of the crap that was said in that conversation together with Hasan and Finkelstein. Don't take my word for it. I think it's really important that people watch that conversation. I also did a full 6-part, I guess it was, probably 15-hour analysis on that video. Let me just make sure. Is that on my website? Oh yeah, the Hasan and Norm Finkelstein analysis data. Yes, it's there for people who want to take a look at that. I have the final data video there, but you can watch all the videos if you want. Did Anonymous acknowledge anything? Yeah, that's weird. Anonymous, you're something in your lensing of this is getting in your way of seeing what the hell's going on. Need to close that. Okay, here we go. And we fact check this like in great depth. That's not what we're doing with regards to these claims today. We're just looking at anti-Semitism. But when we fact check this with regards to Hamas sexual violence, it is true that there is currently no forensic evidence of grape that has been made publicly available by Hamas, but that doesn't mean there isn't circumstantial evidence and testimonial evidence of grape by Hamas, which there is a lot of that. There's a lot of circumstantial and a lot of testimonial evidence. That is still evidence of grape and of sexual violence. We already went through Hamas, Houthi, and Hezbollah normalization. The pig dog allegation. Hasan did call a hostile chatter a bloodthirsty, violent pig dog. Critics have connected this wording to historical anti-Jewish insult traditions. I think there's a lot of applications of the pig dog term, though. The broader evidence weakens that inference. Hasan has used pig dog and similar constructions generically in non-Jewish political contexts and sympathetic as well as critical reporting found his claim of non-anti-Semitic usage plausible. So the quote, yeah, he did say that. Anti-Semitic intent not established. Message level anti-Semitism would be weak / disputed. Hold item. Bureau bids on comment. I think we already went through that. An anti-Hasan archive attributes an undated clip of him saying words to the effect that the Jewish autonomous oblast in Russia, Birabizim, is, quote, a place for Jews to go if they want to. The surrounding context could radically change the meaning. History, discussion, dark humor, anti-Zionist argument, or exclusionary rhetoric are all possible. The full source context was not independently. Let's see if we can find this actual source. See if we can find the source. Why is that open? There we go. Let's do a deep, deep dive. What up, everyone? Smash that like button. Thanks for being here. Shelly Belly says it wasn't only Hamas that did those acts on October 7th. So there is so much information related to October 7th. We're not talking about October 7th in general today. The reason why I'm saying that is because there is an overwhelming amount of information related to that. I've included all of that information in my analysis of Dave Farina's recent propaganda video on Israel Palestine. I can adjudicate that today as well. I think I will, just for the sake, because my memory is telling me that on October 7th specifically, there was no demonstration of any Israeli sexual violence towards Hamas on October 7th. We're doing that deep dive into that. We'll also adjudicate that. Yeah, like I give people the example, like an anti-Zionism statement could be stated like this, and it would be anti-Semitism. Here's the example I use. If someone said, yeah, I wish Hitler and the Nazis would have been successful in wiping out all of those Zionists during World War II. That's an anti-Semitic comment that is targeting Zionists. You understand how that is anti-Semitism? Where the heck did that other window go? Well, that's not the right thing. Huh. Oh, I see. It's right here. So it's an unsupported claim that Israel committed sexual violence against Hamas on October 7th. That's not supported by any of the evidence. Not to say it's not possible something might come forward at a later date, but the evidence currently does not support the claim that Israel committed sexual violence against Hamas on October 7th. So, or was it Shelley? Shelley said, I'm talking about other Palestinian. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. You're talking about other Palestinian terrorist groups and civilians who broke in. Yeah. I see what you're saying. Yes. Yeah. Islamic Jihad and yeah, PFLP. Yeah. Fair enough. Thank you for clarifying. There was one instance in my mind, um, but this was much later date. Okay, where's my? I'm trying to find more information about that particular Hasan quote. But I mean, look, so far we're already there, right? I think the evidence is overwhelming that Hasan Piker is anti-Semitic. So what does that mean? I think he needs to stop being that way and doing that and inviting guests like Norman Finkelstein onto his podcast to just spew anti-Semitism out into the world, um, unchallenged. And some of it was nodded along and agreed to by Hasan Piker in that episode. So, I mean, I think like, yeah, I am highly confident from an epistemic perspective, claiming knowledge on this. So, what is my current position? My current position is that I know, based on my rigorous epistemic standards, that Hasan Piker is anti-Semitic. People can use this video to pass to people if they really want to see the actual evidence of Hasan Piker's anti-Semitism. Let's see. Yeah, we still can't find the original clip of this so-called Birodizian is a place Jews can go if they want to go. So that one's going to remain on hold. We're not adding that to the record. So counter evidence must be included. A rigorous person level judgment cannot ignore evidence pointing in the opposite direction. The deep search did not uncover credible direct Hasan endorsement of classic anti-Semitic doctrines like Jews control the banks, media, America, or the world, Holocaust denial or denial of 6 million figure, blood libel, Jewish racial or biological inferiority as a generalized doctrine, collective Jewish guilt for Israeli conduct, expulsion or killing of Jews because they are Jewish. Hasan has also explicitly condemned synagogue attacks and other unambiguous anti-Semitic violence. In 2026, reporting he characterized synagogue attacks, swastika vandalism, and other acts as real anti-Semitism. Regarding an attempted attack on a Michigan synagogue, he said, "There's no justification for effing trying to go into a synagogue and murder kids." He has additionally rejected formulations that Jews or Zionists secretly run the world, treating such claims as anti-Semitic conspiracy thinking rather than endorsing them. This is a meaningful counter evidence against the simple claim that Hasan straightforwardly holds classic Jew hatred beliefs. Oh, this is the So yeah, we're at that point. Hasan Piker has made multiple statements that can be reasonably classified as anti-Semitic at the message level, and has repeatedly used rhetoric that creates substantial anti-Semitic trope or dehumanization concerns. He has also strongly normalized or sanitized anti-Israel organizations with documented anti-Semitic ideological histories. That's true. I think he is also normalizing anti-Semitism by way of platforming and facilitating anti-Semitism through Norman Finkelstein. When I platform people on the Pangburn stage, I find it to be of the incredibly important for me to make sure that the ideas being espoused on stage, whatever they are, have sufficient pushback. Not me just like, you know, putting someone espousing hateful rhetoric, let's say about trans people, without someone who's well equipped to defend against that rhetoric on the stage. I think that's a really important thing to do. On the anti-Trump tour, people had the opportunity to go up and debate Destiny and have conversations with Destiny. I think it was important to have Destiny up there, as well as the people who are legitimate Trump supporters, to have those conversations about Trumpism. And if there was ever any moment where I felt like the person didn't have an adequate grasp on the information, or really a good enough grasp on what it means to be clear and helpful in a discussion, then I would cut them off short and say, okay, I think we need to move on to the next person. But that is constantly going through my mind when I'm thinking about platforming people. If someone got up on my stage like Norman Finkelstein and started just espousing anti-Semitism and anti-Semitic remarks, I would feel that I had a moral responsibility to explicitly call it out, interrupt it. It's like, no, we're not going to do that here. It would be different if it was Norm Finkelstein up there against Destiny in a debate or conversation, or someone who's a Holocaust scholar, or someone who has a scholarly relationship to Israel, Palestine, and Gaza. But at best, what Hasan Piker is doing with people like Norman Finkelstein, at best, it's just utter stupidity and recklessness. That's in the best case scenario. But I don't think Hasan is just simply doing something stupid there. I think Hasan is a fan of Norman Finkelstein. Out of Hasan's mouth, those words came. Was really wanting to have that conversation, which actually ended up being mostly not so much a conversation, but just a platform for Norman Finkelstein to, spew out his misinformation about Israel, Palestine, and anti-Semitism. Practice and praxis says many people are acting as if they are the same. Are you guys equating anti-Israel, anti-Zionist with anti-Semitism? No, we are not. You can look at the evidence throughout this video. There's been a lot of people coming in. It seems like they are, I'm not saying you're programmed, but you're primed to think that when you see Hasan Piker and anti-Semitism in the same sentence, oh yeah, they're just conflating anti-Semitism with being anti-Israel or anti-Zionism. And no, that's not the case. These two things here are explicit, direct evidence. One of the things Hasan Piker has apologized for, the inbred statement about Orthodox Jews. This one, I was unable to find any apology. One of the most recent large pieces of evidence was having Norman Finkelstein come on his podcast and just spew anti-Semitism out into the world. So no, practice and praxis. We are not equating anti-Israel / anti-Zionist with anti-Semitism. That's not happening here. But this is where I'm at with regards to this conclusion. I think I am well justified. I'm well positioned in this knowledge I have. And I do know at this point that Hasan Piker is anti-Semitic. That can change. Hasan Piker can clear up this stuff. But it's not enough to say, like, I'm not anti-Semitic, bro. I'm just going after, Zionists and Israelis and things like that. But then actually espouse yourself anti-Semitism into the world. Allow people like Norman Finkelstein to come on your podcast and say things like, I believe the Jews brought it on themselves. The collective blame / victim blame directed at Jews as a group, specific donor conduct cannot transfer responsibility to the Jews. This is a trifecta: IHRA, collective blame; JDA, hostility / prejudice against Jews as Jews; nexus, collective guilt. Norman Finkelstein said, again for the record, the Jews brought it on themselves. Jewish billionaire, supremacist, destroyed academic freedom, donor financial pressure. A non-challenge and amplification from Hasan Piker. So the amplification of anti-Semitism by way of Norman Finkelstein is also anti-Semitism. You don't get to put your hands up in the air and say, oh, I'm free of it. I'll have to deal with that after. Okay. All right. I was just checking out the chat there, you guys. Yeah, I mean, I was shocked by the Norm Finkelstein. I'm going to make this wider so you guys can see. I was shocked by the Norm Finkelstein conversation. It wasn't really a conversation. It was just, it seemed like Norm Finkelstein was just given every opportunity he wanted to espouse, you know, anti-Semitism on that show. There was 14 false claims made, 24 unsupported. It's a total of 38. 38 non-factual claims, by the way, in this conversation. Things like the misinformation is just insane in some of these podcasts. It's unbelievable. There was a claim by Norm Finkelstein. There was never a war in Gaza. A genocide is kind of just the opposite. The correction here is that genocide and armed conflict are not mutually exclusive categories. The Genocide Convention itself applies in peace or war, and the Gaza hostilities are plainly an armed conflict, even while genocide findings / allegations may also apply. The accurate formulation is that an armed conflict can also involve genocide. Genocide is not, quote, the opposite of war. The claim from Norm Finkelstein was, what's the only possible conclusion? If they didn't post any, it's because they didn't have any such images. And if they didn't have any such images, it's because it never happened. This is, of course, a non sequitur. Sexual crimes are often established through testimony, circumstantial patterns, injuries, hostage accounts, and corroborating evidence rather than a perpetrator filmed recording. Multiple UN findings directly contradict the categorical conclusion. So the absence of a publicly identified perpetrator filmed grape video does not prove that sexual violence did not occur. Testimony, circumstantial patterns, injuries, hostage accounts, and corroboration can establish sexual crimes, and UN findings contradict categorical denial. This report, by the way, is on the Pengburn website, peng-burn.com/analysis. Norm Finkelstein says, what was this one? Fake commission, describing the pattern mission, automatic caption wording. Oh, okay. Fake commission. Oh, this is about Patton. Right. So Patton led an invited UN technical mission, not a criminal commission. The mission openly described its limitations and applied evidentiary standards of reasonable grounds and clear and convincing information. Calling it, quote, fake misstates its institutional status. We have Norm Finkelstein saying, the court voted 15-2 that Israel was plausibly committing a genocide. The 15-2 votes imposed provisional measures after finding plausible rights under the Genocide Convention and a real risk of irreparable prejudice. The court did not decide that Israel was plausibly committing genocide. One more time, folks. The court did not decide that Israel was plausibly committing genocide, and its former president later clarified that distinction. The ICJ will be the ones to determine whether a genocide has been committed. And we're not going to get that determination until probably 2030 or 2031. So to call what happened in Gaza a genocide is premature. It's epistemically irresponsible. And it's just the determining body hasn't had a chance to review the evidence for, the evidence against. These organizations that have determined, based on their best efforts, that Israel has committed genocide, Israel hasn't given them their counter evidence. Genocide is different than war crimes. Genocide is different than ethnic cleansing. A lot of people going around saying that genocide has been committed, they really don't understand that genocidal intent has to be demonstrated. You can't just point at all the rubble and say, what about all this? That's good evidence of pointing towards war crimes. But the counter evidence needs to be adjudicated. These other organizations haven't adjudicated the counter evidence, the evidence that will come from Israel when this is tried at the ICJ. So it's ethically, I think it's ethically and epistemically irresponsible to be making that determination of genocide when the investigative body hasn't been able to do their investigation. That is the ICJ. Let's see. Oh, there was a claim that Norm Finkelstein said the UN Resolution 194 was a Security Council resolution. Resolution 194 was adopted by the UN General Assembly, not the Security Council. In this conversation, there was a lot of these kind of just mistakes on the facts and the information in this conversation. Norm Finkelstein said, these territories are not occupied. They are illegally annexed. The ICJ refers to the occupied Palestinian territory and treats Israel as the occupying power, while also finding annexation of parts and unlawful continued presence. Annexation practices do not erase occupation status. So the territory remains legally described as the occupied Palestinian territory. Unlawful annexation practices can coexist with, rather than replace, occupation status. Okay, Norm Finkelstein on anti-Semitism effects. He was saying things like no effect, no impact on life opportunities in the United States for Jews. Hate crimes, workplace harassment, and discriminatory treatment are documented, even if aggregate outcomes are comparatively favorable. Quote, no impact is defeated by counterexamples. Anti-Semitic stereotypes, harassment, and discrimination can and do affect employment, safety, and opportunity. The universal no impact is false. There's a false APAC spending denominator. There's a false, this false claim that every definition of anti-Semitism includes irrationality in it, which some very simple research by Norm Finkelstein, which he claims really not to use the internet that much, or to be online, or to like, I think he should really start using the internet. But definitions do vary of anti-Semitism. Some refer to prejudice, hostility, discrimination, or hatred without making, quote, irrationality a necessary textual element. The universal is readily falsified. So definitions of anti-Semitism vary. Many refer to prejudice, hostility, discrimination, or hatred without making irrationality a required textual element. Yeah. Norm Finkelstein also said, "Have you heard of a single battle in Gaza? I haven't. The Gaza conflict contains many documented engagements that meet ordinary military usage of battle or armed engagement. A battle does not require parity of forces. So, of course, there have been battles in Gaza. That's just false." There was this misinformation about by Norm Finkelstein about uh, I think this also might have been I think they were both talking about this. The Northern Alliance slash Massoud tried to deliver Osama bin Laden for cooperation in the previous World Trade Center bombing with the blind sheik. The 1993 World Trade Center bombing centered a Ramzi Youssef on Ramzi Youssef and a network linked to the blind sheik milieu. The 9/11 Commission places CIA operational partnership with Ahmad Shah Massoud against bin Laden, mainly around 1999. The transcript conflates actors and chronology here. So there was also just claims like pre-2023 Gaza killings ratios were 100 to 1, 200 to 1. There's no operation period, numerator or denominator is specified. Some episodes were highly asymmetric, but an undefined 100 to 1 or 200 to 1 universal is not reproducible. Um, what else? Oh, yeah, the Gutierrez claims. This claim that Gutierrez appoints his fake commission to vindicate Israel, says Israel didn't do anything wrong concerning Mavi Marmara. The Secretary General's panel was established by Ban Ki-moon, not Antonio Gutierrez. So wires getting crossed again in Norm Finkelstein's head. Um, this was another claim by Norm Finkelstein. I don't believe the term Zionism conveys information. It's a term of abuse. It doesn't isolate a phenomena. So, whatever its polemical uses, Zionism has formal programs, institutions, and a long intellectual history. The term plainly conveys substantive political information, even though its contemporary usage varies. Yeah, this claim by Norm Finkelstein. The Israeli Jews, they're not Jews. Israeli Jews are Jews. Political or moral disagreement cannot literally erase their Jewish identity. Nexus specifically flags denying Jewish identity because of perceived wrong. Because of a perceived wrong Israel position as anti-Semitic. So, yeah, this is just blatant anti-Semitism from um, Norm Finkelstein. And based on my memory, this was another one of these cases that Hasan did not uh, try to refute in their conversation. Yeah, so this whole thing was really problematic. This whole report can be found, and yeah, you can look like this is the false column, this is the unsupported column. Both of those together, 38 non-factual claims throughout the whole entire conversation. The propaganda level was quite high. What up, everyone? Make sure you smash that like button. We are live late tonight, going through this information. There's something else I was pulling here. I want to do one more audit. While we are here. Good evening, everybody. Hope you are all well. No, Canada is not Hamas. Just while I'm waiting on this other information. Hasan made a claim during this podcast that Candace Owens only got fired from the Daily Wire because she was anti-Semitic and had become anti-Israel. The Owens Daily Wire split heavily involved Israel/anti-Semitism disputes, but a sole cause employment motive is not established by the public evidence. So it shouldn't be stated as a fact, right? But that's the only reason. Norm Finkelstein said Jews, quote, disproportionately occupy the positions in industry, in culture, in everything. This is more anti-Semitism. People don't realize that this is anti-Semitism, by the way. Everything is a failed universal and no denominator or occupied data set is offered. It also maps directly onto classic collective power tropes, classic collective power anti-Semitic tropes. Quote, Jewish supremacy is the correct replacement/synonym for Zionism. This is an ideological reframing, not an empirically established synonym. Zionism contains competing currents. Specific rights structures can be tested without redefining every Zionist position as ethnic supremacy. Norm Finkelstein made the claim that Kenneth Roth systematically watered down legal allegations against Israel. This is a serious internal editorial motive pattern allegation. Public HRW output under Roth repeatedly alleged Israeli war crimes and in 2021, apartheid / persecution. The transcript supplies no internal editorial corpus proving systematic watering down. There's a lot of mind reading and motive attribution by Norm Finkelstein in this conversation. They attach such value to a Jewish life and no value to any non-Jewish life. This converts policies and exchange ratios into an ethnic universal about valuing lives. No data set can sustain, quote, no value for every non-Jewish life. Let's look at this. Let's look at instances where Hasan himself gave airtime to anti-Semitic speech, propaganda, or actors. The Houthi propaganda music videos. What Hasan actually platformed, official / pro Houthi propaganda shown positively on stream. Anti-Semitism nexus, Houthi defining slogan includes curse the Jews. Okay, so Hasan is showing Houthi propaganda, music videos. This is just more evidence of his support and for this group that has in their defining slogan that includes curse the Jews. Rashid al-Haddad interview. Hasan platformed a friendly interview with viral Yemeni figure associated with Houthi seized Galaxy leader. Anti-Semitism nexus, Houthi milieu explicitly anti-Semitic. Rashid's personal anti-Semitism not established, but Houthi milieu explicitly anti-Semitic. This is strong normalization. Elias Rodriguez manifesto, or Elias Rodriguez manifesto. What Hasan actually platformed. He read / displayed alleged manifesto after Capitol Jewish Museum murders. Anti-Semitism nexus. Attack later charged as hate crime / terrorism. Manifesto justified political violence. This is platforming extremist material. The endorsement by Hasan obviously is not established. April 2025, protester chanting, quote, curse upon the Jews. Again, April 2025, protester chanting, quote, curse upon the Jews. What Hasan actually platformed, explicitly anti-Semitic language, went out on Hasan's live stream in April 2025. Direct anti-Jewish statement, aired but not fair evidence of intentional platforming, but he did air it. Bad empanada / GDF / Rogan. Hasan has collaborated with / reacted to them. Various anti-Semitism allegations exist. Let's dig deeper into this one. Well, I guess I'll have more information here. Okay. Let's look at April 7th, 2025. During Hassan's coverage of a pro-Palestinian demonstration, a mass protester encountered Hassan and spoke into around his stream. Contemporaneous clips were preserved on Twitch and Reddit. Multiple translations identified the man as chanting a version of God is great, death to America, death to Israel, followed later by curse upon the Jews. The original Twitch clip is still indexed. A contemporaneous report likewise says the protester uttered anti-Semitic phrases while speaking to Hassan, and specifically notes that Hassan does not speak Farsi and apparently did not understand what was being said at the time. This is therefore technically an example where explicit anti-Semitism was broadcast through Hassan's platform. But we shouldn't count this as evidence that Hassan intentionally platformed anti-Semitism in this instance. But it was nevertheless signaled. All right. Well, I think there's more than enough in this video. People can do with it what they wish, but I think the evidence is clear that Hasan Piker is anti-Semitic. I mean, to me, it's just I'm highly confident in claiming knowledge to that. Yeah, this is based on rigorous study I've been engaging in the past couple weeks with regards to Hasan, with regards to people like Norman Finkelstein, who Hasan platforms and calls basically one of his heroes. And all of the other stuff we've discussed today. There seems to be a large swath of people out there that have a hard time linking Hasan to anti-Semitism, but this video should remove that veil. It's amazing, though. I have noticed subscribers, since I have been focusing a bit on anti-Semitism. Something that triggered that was the Dave Farina video as of late. I mean, if you look back, you'll see when Hamas attacked on October 7th, I started releasing some content around that time, sharing my disgust with regards to everything that happened. The issue fell off my radar just due to other things, things happening in my life, having my second child and promoting the anti-Trump debate tour and all that stuff and other events we were doing. But yeah, I'm quite troubled with the seeming normalization of anti-Semitism in the mainstream here. People getting away with platforming it. That's a real problem. If you guys think that the evidence here today and the evidence that's publicly available demonstrates that Hasan Piker is anti-Semitic, maybe give a 1. I mean, I'll add my 1. I think the evidence is quite overwhelming. And that isn't to say someone can be anti-Semitic when not intending to be. It's not to say that Hasan Piker it's not to say that there's evidence that Hasan Piker hates Jews for being Jews. But sometimes a deep hatred towards Zionists, for example, that, the estimate is roughly 60 to 70% of Jews around the world would happily wear the label of Zionist. And of course, Zionism is broken down into like 8 to 10 different academic categories. It looks like we have a lot of ones here. Thank you. Yeah, that's my second child. Her name is Journey. My first child, Aegean, will be two on December 20th. Someone, let's see. Mad King says, for context, Deadly had commented that civilian Palestinians that attacked the wake of Hamas were no longer civilians. I was drilling into that nuance. Okay. Well, I really appreciate all of your guys' attention to this issue and support for the video. This level of deep dive, trying to get down to the actual facts, evidence, things people actually said, what's in the public record, this is obviously much less popular than, turning on people's video content and giving some reactions to it, some normative expressions. But I do wish that trying to garner a more clear picture of what's actually going on in reality, I wish that was more popular. You can find all Pangburn analysis content at pang-burn.com/analysis. Also, if you join the Pangburn Discord server, you'll likely get access much earlier to this kind of information before other people. That's where I tend to release it earlier before I come live on YouTube. Someone says these deep dives are great, but could we get some Subway Surfers or Factoria or something alongside? Yeah, I know people really like to watch gaming during this stuff, but I do think it distracts from the information. But I get it. It would be nice to see something more interactive on the screen, but I do think that pulls our focus from the actual information. And I know it's difficult. It's not that I'm completely closed off to that, like having a small box of gaming going on up in the top corner. I don't want it to pull away, distract from the information itself, but I'm not closed-minded to the realization that the clear delivery of this information can be boring and unattractive. How do we make this stuff more sexy to people? Yeah. I mean, I try to do that with intellectualism with our live events and whatnot, trying to find ways to make it more sexy. I raw dog staring into Travis's eyes the entire show. Don't get lost in them. Yeah. This is also not um all of this information is not to say that Hasan Piker is necessarily, you know, a bad person. Someone can be anti-Semitic while still trying to do good in the world, not realizing that what they're doing is facilitating anti-Semitism because they think that they're shielding themselves. They in their own mind, they think that really what they're doing is just they're going after Zionists, they're going after Zionism, they're going after Israel. But intent really doesn't matter when we're establishing anti-Semitism based on the, like, just because you didn't intend to be racist toward a black person, you were racist towards a black person. Anti-Semitism, same thing. You may not be intending to be anti-Semitic. You may hate Israel. You may hate Zionism and Zionists. But often, well, that hate can cause you to cross lines that you don't even realize you're crossing. Now, some people are going to read into these findings that Hasan Piker is anti-Semitic and say, well, yeah, he's anti-Semitic and he's trying to do it on purpose, or he's purposefully anti-Semitic. I don't see good evidence of that. I think my general opinion of Hasan Piker's anti-Semitism is that he thinks what he is doing shouldn't be classified as anti-Semitism, even in some of these examples we've brought up today. I think the evidence, the positive for that, is that there are examples of him talking about true anti-Semitism he is seeing out there in the world. He doesn't think he is included in that generally. But the Norm Finkelstein quote unquote conversation is evidence drastically in favor of Hasan Piker's promotion of anti-Semitism and all of the additional information and evidence we've presented here today. I wouldn't be against having a detailed walkthrough conversation with Hasan Piker about this. I think if Hasan Piker did an audit or studied me or got someone to do an honest rundown of who I am, I think the evidence would point towards that he would get a good faith, helpful exchange with me on this topic if he wanted to actually have a conversation about the evidence. I have offered him, some different conversation opportunities with regards to Israel Palestine and some other things. So we'll see. Maybe he will take me up on those someday. Maybe not. Shelley says it's interesting because Hasan is able to see Islamophobia in the smallest of places, but when it comes to anti-Semitism, yeah. So that's when we look at the asymmetry, right? When we look at how easy it is for someone to call out, and we were dealing with this with regards to Pisco, who we were investigating last night, because Pisco seems to have this problem of seeing the anti-Semitism in Hasan Piker, but easily sees the anti-Semitism in someone like, what's his name? Nick Fuentes. Or it's easy for Pisco to see, or to say, like, when I meet a MAGA person or when I know someone is MAGA, I just assume they are racist, right? So there's there's an asymmetry here. And asymmetry recognition is typically a sign of one's negativity or positivity biases. We all have them. Just unfortunately, some people lean into those biases and do so, claiming virtue because it is serving a political project. Now, that's a term you got to watch out for nowadays, I've noticed. People will say, someone will point out like a misinformation a person spread, and or a few pieces of misinformation. They'll get frustrated and say, well, I mean, you know what? We're in dire straits here. I'm engaged in a political project, and that means, you know, and that's more important to me than whether this might be misinformation or not. And that's a real problem. Yeah, if someone wants to tier the level of anti-Semitism in Hasan Piker versus Norm Finkelstein, I would put Norm Finkelstein at, like, level 3. Hasan Piker, or let's say high resolution, Norm Finkelstein is engaging in high resolution anti-Semitism. Low resolution anti-Semitism, Hasan Piker. I don't know who I would put in that mid tier. And then, yeah, the people who are having a hard time seeing Hasan Piker's anti-Semitism, I don't necessarily think they are anti-Semitic. Like someone like Pisco, I don't think he's necessarily anti-Semitic because he's having a hard time seeing Hasan's anti-Semitism. There could be many reasons as to why someone's having a hard time seeing that. But what are the reasons as to why Hasan Piker is not seeing Norm Finkelstein's explicit anti-Semitism? That's an interesting question. Hasan Piker, I think it's most plausible that Hasan Piker knows that Norm Finkelstein is, in some of the things he says, anti-Semitic. If Hasan Piker doesn't know that, then his level of disconnect on what anti-Semitism really is just deeper and more vast than we could ever imagine. But the evidence doesn't show that Hasan Piker has that deep level anti-Semitism. But when we looked at some of those examples of, like, yeah, if Hasan Piker sees people, spray painting swastikas on things, then he's like, yeah, that's anti-Semitic. But I mean, does Norm Finkelstein have to go out there and paint swastikas on synagogues to be able to call him anti-Semitic? Like, come on. That is just not the academic rigorous standards for anti-Semitism. I will look at the conversation. Shelley says Pisco seemed to have changed his mind and said he could see that Hasan is anti-Semitic. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, well, this is another video that can be shared with people like Pisco that outlines the available evidence. It's true people might see this video and say, yeah, I think Travis outlined instances of anti-Semitism and the spreading of anti-Semitism by Hasan Piker. So he is engaged in anti-Semitism. But they might say, but that's not enough for me to call Hasan Piker anti-Semitic. Well, what would be enough? Does he need to go out onto the street and start painting swastikas? Like, come on. There's swastika. I have gotten my hands on and my brain on almost every single piece of World War II documentary information, including the hyper nerd level of reading the thousands upon thousands throughout many, many years of memoirs and letters and notes. There are millions of pieces of information, by the way. Interesting information from World War II. So yeah, I hear it pronounced swastika, never swastika. Someone says, can't we all just get along? Yeah, I mean, getting along includes uprooting anti-Semitic tendencies and the promotion of those tendencies. There are many other issues in the world as well, but we are focusing on that particular issue today. Well, I have to say, I love you all very much. I really appreciate your support on these streams. I'm live almost every night. It would be great if you guys could come back and join me as we do more work like this. And yeah, if you found this valuable, please share it around. I did post this on X. Those of you who are on X, if you could hit that repost button on this video, that would be very helpful. For those of you who are on X, I'd really appreciate that. And I think probably what we'll do tomorrow is look at the new Pisco video, because I think that's the academically responsible thing to do. We have our original report of Pisco's position. We can update that report with new information. We can do a version 2.1 and go from there. Make sure you guys take 1 itty bitty second to smash that like button before we leave. Of course, remember that we will be live in Vancouver, Canada. I'll be taking a trip back to my home city of Vancouver, Canada. I lived in Vancouver for like 15 years. And we will be having the main event will be on September 19th between it's on the poster here, between Destiny and Ezra Levant. I'll be there, of course. Just walk up to me, debate me on anything. But first, you have to give me a hug. I'm a hugger. We'll be at the Central Presbyterian Church for this. I got to tell you, these churches, I'm an atheist, but these churches have become great places to host intellectual debates, especially if, if they include controversial figures like Ezra Levant and Destiny. But the day before, on September 18th, we're having a debate Destiny and Not So Erudite event. They will be on stage together. Planet Peterson, the YouTuber, is going to be crashing that party and debating both of them on stage. He's going to be debating Destiny on Israel-Palestine and debating Kyla Turner on stuff related to her religious beliefs. And there'll be some other people, different YouTubers there. So we will be, it'll be a big content creation bomb going off there. Well, I shouldn't say bomb, whatever. It's a church. But I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun. What else do we have? We'll be in Dallas, Texas on October 3rd. Be back to New York on October 10th. Dallas, Texas is going to be Pearl Davis and Lauren Southern making their Pangburn stage debuts. That's going to be interesting. This event in Dallas is like a red pill manosphere debate event. And opening up for that one will be Destiny and someone by the name of Terrence Popp, who's like a manosphere guy. Bit of red pill stuff there as well. So Destiny and him will be having a fight. And then October 10th, we will have the first date of the No God Debate Tour featuring Justin Deconstruction Zone, Dr. Blitz, and someone by the name of Allegedly Ian. All three of those atheists will be on stage, and theists will have opportunities to debate all three of them at the same time. And that'll be a great time. Going to have a lot of fun. We'll also be bringing that over to LA and California, or LA and San Francisco. I'll be on stage with Sabina Hassenfelder. When is that one again? November something? All the events are on our website. Sabina and I will be having some conversations about science. I'll definitely be getting into some of the things about her science promotion that I think might be a little bit misleading in how she promotes some things. So that'll be an interesting conversation. But anyways, we got a lot coming up live event wise, but yeah, it's definitely bedtime for me. So thank you all so much. It's 11:30 here in Oaxaca, Mexico, and appreciate you guys for joining me tonight, and love you all. Please make sure you're out there maximizing well-being for yourself and those around you. Good night.